Great. We're gonna lose yet another challenge. We're not gonna get these jobs, and our lives are basically ruined.
Okay, hold on a second. Your life isn't ruined. You guys are 21 years old. You have your whole life in front of you.
Do you even know what it's like to be 21 right now? I mean, a quarter of the kids coming out of college can't even get jobs.
That's a correct statistic. Mother says you can work hard and go to the right school, but nothing is guaranteed anymore. That's life. Sorry.
These guys are right. The whole American dream thing that you guys grew up on, that's all it is nowadays. A dream.
You're too young to be this cynical. Do you really see the world this way?
That's not how we see it. It's just the way things are now.
There's a peace far beyond all understanding. May it ever set my heart at ease. Dear anxiety come, I remember that peace is a promise you keep.
Like many movies, they confront the reality that the American dream isn't really possible anymore in different ways out there, which we'll get into a little bit more. The whole American dream is about the idea that our forefathers set out to create a country in which we would be free to pursue our own happiness, that if we didn't have the ruling overlords of a king or such, that we could be free to pursue our own happiness. And of course, a day like today is where we celebrate and remember those who gave their lives to allow the rest of us to have the freedom to pursue such cause. The problem, though, is that pursuit is much harder than any of us ever imagined it would be. Now, I wish I could do magic tricks, because so many of the illustrations I have in my mind would work better if I could just do magic. And so Pastor Chris said I should probably use a laundry basket, because in his house it's magical. He says he puts dirty clothes in it and they disappear and show back up in his dresser clean. So I don't know if this will do any other magic tricks for me, but I'm going to use it this morning to illustrate, if you will, each of us inside of us has a container in which we seek to put things in. And the idea is, if you could ever fill this container up, the end result is you would be satisfied, you'd be complete, you'd be happy once and for all. And so the question is what can you put in here to significantly fill it up? And it's interesting, no matter where you go in the world, we have a narrative which will tell you what you can put in here to find that sense of happiness. If you fill it up with this method, that will work. And so in traditional cultures, the way that you fill this up is by fulfilling your role in society, fulfilling your role in the family, or fulfilling your role for your country. Now, this was very true in America many years ago, that the idea was that you were a good boy or girl, or if you were a good husband or wife or mother or father, whatever it may be, if you did that and excelled at that, that would be fulfilling, and that you would find happiness in being able to do that. Or perhaps if you were to serve your country in some way, and you were to give your life to your country or give your life in service to your country, you would find that sense of fulfillment for duty, honor, country. By fulfilling up that role, that you would then find that fulfillment. This was very popular in America back in the 50s, still very popular in other very traditional cultures. Even communist countries will promote the narrative that if you do your duty for the motherland, that will lead you to the happiness. Collectively as a society, we can all be full if we all do our part, is sort of one of the mantras that you'd have in other parts of the world. Somewhere in the 60s or so, it seems like there was a cultural revolution. Part of this cultural revolution in our own country was to move away from the traditional mindset of how you fill this bin up in our lives. And the idea became that if you're going to fill this up, you can't do it in a traditional role. You can't do it by fulfilling a traditional role of everything society has been telling you, or by simply duty, honor, country. Rather, you need to go figure out who you are. Everybody's path is different. The way that you're going to fill this up is different for everybody. And this might start beginning to sound like, yeah, I think that's really how you fill this up. And that's more popular in our own culture now, that you need to find your own pursuit to fill this up, your own method, because it's different for everybody. What will fill up your life and fill up your life is different than what will fill up my life. And so we each need to be free to pursue our own pursuits to find that sense of happiness in our own life. The problem, though, is none of them work at all. And if you look at the movies and the stories we tell over time, we tell stories that will try to support these narratives. But over time, you begin to see that the stories even get a little confused. In other words, for these myths to work, we must tell the narrative in story form. And so for us, if you think back to the TV shows that were very popular back in the traditional era of America, Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver, or think about Patton. What was Patton about? Patton was about a rogue general who wants to go off and do his own thing. And what is Eisenhower and Bradley always trying to do? If we're going to win the war, we got to fall in line. We got to do our duty. We got to do what we're supposed to do. You need to fall in line, Patton, so that way we can all work together to win the war. Because if we all do that, then we will find success. It reinforces those narratives over and over. And then along came movies that sort of pushed us out of the traditional mindset, which probably most notably, anybody remember Pleasantville? Pleasantville, the beginning of the movie starts off black and white, almost sort of like a portrait of those black and white era 1950s TV shows like Father Knows Best. And the whole idea is then at some point the children begin to make decisions for themselves. And when they go to pursue their own dreams, everything becomes in full color. That if you want to add true color to your life, if you truly want to find fulfillment in your life, you need to break out of the traditional roles and do your own thing. Like, for instance, it doesn't matter who you are, you can be whatever you want to be. Wasn't that the mantra they told us in school? You could be a pig and become a sheepdog, right, babe? It doesn't matter who you are. Even a pig can become a sheepdog. You can be whatever you want to be. You just need to find your own path so you can find your own sense of fulfillment. Or think about, remember I Love Lucy? What's the most famous episode of I Love Lucy? What scene do you think of? The chocolates. Do you know what the message of that episode was, or what the plot was on that episode? Lucy and Ricky are having a conversation about who has it more difficult, the stay-at-home mom or the at-work husband. And so they decide they're going to swap roles. And so Lucy goes to work in the chocolate factory and finds it's much harder than she thought it was. Ricky goes to work as, in the home, and he finds it's much harder than he thought it was. But true happiness for both of them would only be found if they fulfilled their roles that they've been given as a housewife and a husband. Right? That's the message. What's interesting is as we've explored these two ends, we've found that there's problems with both of them. And so then movies like Sweet Home Alabama came out. What was the story of that movie? You had Reese Witherspoon, who's engaged to Dr. McDreamy up in New York with her new career. Maybe I'm confusing characters, but same person. And she goes back to finalize her divorce with her ex-husband back in the old traditional town in Alabama. And then what does she find? That she would find more happiness in the traditional role back in Alabama with her husband than she ever would with Dr. McDreamy pursuing her own dreams and her own career in New York. Or what about the movie Family Man? Nicolas Cage, if you remember, he's a successful Wall Street type in New York City, alone, a bachelor. He's doing everything he wanted to do to be successful, but then he wonders, what would life be like if he had only pursued a more traditional path? Because what he's done to pursue his own dreams and become successful on his own has not led to be fulfilling at all in his life. And so he dreams what it would be like to be a family man, married to Kate. And he looks at his life selling tires at his father-in-law's tire shop and says, can I be happy here? And he comes back and says, I think I would be happier as a family man than I would on Wall Street doing that kind of thing. Or sort of the pinnacle of this idea of the switch back traditional mindsets, Forrest Gump. What does Forrest want? He wants Jenny to marry him and grow up and live and grow old in Greenbow, Alabama. What does Jenny want? The exact opposite. She wants to go find herself, and so she chases pursuit after pursuit after pursuit. And what happens is Jenny goes out and chases all these different pursuits. All of them have dead ends. And what does she do in the end? Tragically, she finally realizes that happiness was found back in Greenbow, Alabama, married to Forrest, where they have a child. She ends up passing away because she went and chased her dreams and her visions out where she went. Remember, she goes and she hitchhikes, and the guy says, where do you want to go? And she says, I don't care, anywhere but here. That's the mantra. It says, the progressive lifestyle, get out there, find your own path. And it doesn't work for her, but where does the movie end? It ends there with Forrest and his son and the happiness that comes from traditional values. Now, if I am ruining all of these plots for you, I say all the time, you've had more than 10 years to watch the movie. I don't care. There's no spoiler alert warnings given on older movies. But probably the best of all of them was a movie called The Joy Luck Club. Anybody seen The Joy Luck Club? Now, most guys haven't seen it because it's like an all-female cast, all-female movie. Some people call it like the Asian version of Steel Magnolias, which I don't know if that's accurate or not because I haven't seen Steel Magnolias. And I got to give my man disclaimer. The only reason I watched Joy Luck Club is because Blockbuster did it to me on accident. They put the wrong movie in the case. Ever had that happen? And you're into it and you're like, I don't think this is what I rented, but, well, it's too late to go back to the store. We'll just watch it. That's my disclaimer. All right. The movie was very interesting, though, culturally. What the movie was about 4 women who grow up in traditional China and the hardships of the experience that they had. And so they realize in the traditional mindset, trying to play all the traditional roles for women in the traditional society back in China did not lead to happiness for them. So what they wanted was for their daughters to grow up in America where they'd be free to pursue their own dreams and their own visions of happiness and could do their own career path. And so what happens as the movie plays out is the daughters are dealing with the fact that their own visions and their own dreams and their own pursuits are not working out. And they're talking with their mom thinking, was it better for you when you were a little girl? And the mom would have these flashbacks of her growing up back in the traditional setting about how it didn't work out in the traditional setting. And basically what the movie is trying to show us is the traditional and the progressive idea for how you make your happiness in life, neither one of them work. They're both myths. They both don't work out at all. There's got to be some other path out there. And I don't know where you're at on this journey, whether you're pursuing the traditional or the progressive or switching back from the progressive back over to the traditional, whatever it may be. But at some point, you'll be disillusioned with whatever path you take. At some point, it's going to hit you square in the face. This doesn't work out. You're told from the youngest of age, you pursue academics, and if you work hard in school, you can do whatever you want to do. It'll open up all the doors for you, and you can chase after your dreams. And so some of you go the military route, and you first maybe want to go in as an officer, but the recruiter says we don't have any positions open for you, so just go ahead and enlist now, and don't you worry. As hardworking as you are, I'm sure you'll become an officer in no time. And at some point, you realize your recruiter, no matter what they said, lied. If you go the college route, maybe you don't get into the college of your choice. So you wonder, are my hopes and dreams for future ever going to be dashed? Or maybe you do, even worse, only to find that when you graduate, there's not that perfect job out there that has the salary that your parents have with the benefits that your parents have waiting for you the first year out of college. But instead you have some entry-level position where you got to grind. And it's not quite what you thought it was going to be, and it was going to be a lot harder. This path to success was a lot harder than you thought it was. For some of you, you thought that the path to happiness was in that marriage relationship, whether that was just a part of your pursuit of your own path, or perhaps that was the traditional path you were following after. And the idea was, if I can find the perfect person, then I will be happy. And you look around this room as you come in here on Sunday mornings, and you see these couples who've been at it a lot longer, and you go, oh, he got it right. She got it right. That's what I got to do. I just got to find one like that because clearly they got the right one. I need to find the right one. Only to find out that marriage is a lot harder than you thought it was. Kids, the traditional role, if I can just have kids, then everything will be great. Nobody tells you that the first 5 years of having kids are miserable. I'm sorry. And you can go, oh, but there's No, not when you're living through it. Those are experiences I'm glad I had. But I tell young parents, when they have that look in their eye, I'm like, listen, nobody told you how difficult this was going to be. You don't have a life when you have kids. You go from being able to do it. There is nothing better than married, no kids. Is that not true? It's the best thing ever, right? There's nothing more miserable than married 1, 2, or 3 toddlers. You just keep on adding the misery as you add them into the room, right? You have no life. You try to go, if you have little toddlers, sometime this weekend, you're going to be tempted that you're going to have a good time this weekend when you go to the Memorial Day party. No, you won't. You would be a lot happier sitting at home on your couch, watching the race or anything else on TV with your kids locked up in a sealed compartment in your room. Because you go to that party, you don't get to have fun. You just have to chase a toddler around to keep them from killing themselves, right? I remember one party, my son literally just walks in, sees the pool. Oh, water. Straight to the bottom. I didn't have time to change my bathing suit. I was in the pool. I didn't have a dry. Where's your dry set of clothes? They got wet the first second I got here. That's your life when you got little kids. Nobody tells you how hard that's going to be. It's rewarding on the back end. But some of you think to yourself you'll never be happy because of the misery you have with kids. Some of you are frustrated because you haven't been able to have kids. Some of you are the spoiled, rotten type who are like, well, I only had boys and I really wanted a girl. And other people in this room are going, well, at least you had something. And we get disillusioned at some point along the way that there's not the happiness we thought there was going to be there. Others of you are thinking, well, if I had the perfect house, I'll be happy. The perfect house, right? Can you ever get the perfect house? It seems like it is never big enough or pretty enough to satisfy the both of you, right? It just never will be. You'll go over to a friend's house, and as soon as you walk up and your wife says, oh, I love what they've done with their flowers. Already you know you're not going to have a free Saturday the rest of the summer. That's it. Nope, we're going to have to put in the retaining wall and build it in, and we're going to build up the raised gardens and the flower beds, everything else, because now all of a sudden our garden is no longer any good, our house is a mess, we got to completely start over. For some of you, your happiness is going to be found, I'd be able to fill this bucket up if I could fill it up with fish. If I could fill it up with fish, I'd be a happy man. And so the problem right now is I just need to get a better rod. That's all I need. I need a better rod. And if I could get a better rod for this summer, I'll have a great fishing experience this summer. And so you got that rod, which costs a couple $100. I know it's a little bit beyond the budget, but if I had that rod, think of all the fish that I could catch. Then you get that rod and you look out there and you see a guy in a kayak and you think to yourself, wow, I bet there's more fish out there beyond where I can get from the shore. So if I just had that kayak, I need that kayak that you can pedal. That's only about $1,000 or so. I'll get one of those. And you get out there and you realize that you can get a lot further out if you just had a little trolling motor on this. You with the trolling motor, and you go from the trolling motor wanting to have a bass boat with kind of glitter on the bottom, because that'll be all better. But the problem is once you get the bass boat with the glitter on the bottom, well, now you got to go to all these public boat ramps and deal with all the craziness that goes on at those places. People don't have to back the trailer down in the water like an adult. And so you say, what I really need, I need to have a lake house where I can go fishing on my own anytime I want. And when you get the lake house, you know what happens? The cost and the bills of all that stuff cost so much you never have any time to enjoy it because you got to work so hard just to afford it. So you never really ever get that chance to get on the lake house. And it seems like everything you're doing to fill this up never ever works. And then you wonder, well, who does it work for? Who gets to fill this thing up? Who actually ever does it work for? Anybody see the roast of Tom Brady recently? First of all, I don't know why anybody would ever subject themselves to that kind of thing. But I showed a video here years ago, which I couldn't help but think about as I watched parts of that roast. I just caught the highlights of it. He sat there and they made fun of him over the fact that he no longer has his athletic talent. He's a retired. No matter how successful he was, he's now a has-been. His wife left him, sees his kids part-time, and he was just basically a sitting joke. And years ago, when he was at the height of his career, I showed a video when he was in the middle of winning Super Bowls in New England. Pains me to say that. The interviewer says to him, you're more successful than any quarterback in history. You've got money such that you or your descendants after you will never have to work again. You broke up with a supermodel to marry another supermodel. How does it feel to be Tom Brady? You're more famous in the city of Boston than anybody who's gone before you, including Larry Bird and all the other legends that nobody ever thought could be replaced. How does it feel to be Tom Brady? And his answer was, with all of this, why do I still feel like as if there's something more? And the interviewer says, well, what? And he says, I wish I knew. I can't help but think, I don't know. I just can't help but think, is that why he left New England to pursue to see, can I win a championship in another town? Yes, I did. I did. And where does it leave you? You're sitting on stage, the butt of jokes. Even the guy who has, I'm sorry, as much as it pains me to say it, is there anybody who could possibly be more successful at filling up the bucket than that guy? Really? If that guy didn't fill it up with all his accomplishments, what's that leave the rest of us? It's not going to work. And then you come into church and the pastor says, let's open up now to Philippians chapter 4. verse 4, where Paul says, rejoice always. And I will say it again, rejoice. Yeah. I don't think you live in the real world, Steve. I don't think you understand what it's like out here. You don't understand, my bucket's not full. I don't have a lot to rejoice in. Somebody just dumped it out. I just got back from the funeral. The divorce attorney told me how much it's going to cost. I'm not getting the raise. I'm not getting the promotion. I'm going to lose the house. They just dumped out everything that was in the bucket. And I just watched Tom Brady with his full bucket, and he ain't happy either. And now you're going to come in here and tell me to rejoice always? Let me begin by telling you the problem with chapter 4 of Philippians. By the way, it is one of the best chapters you'll ever read in the Bible. It is one of the great ones. It is the chapter of mental health, Philippians chapter 4. The problem, though, is it also contains the highest concentration of verses that are taken out of context. We love to pull verses out of here and put it up over top of locker rooms. We put them up on quilts. We love to put them as screensavers. You put them on our dashboard, right? We love to quote them out of context. Oh, God says you got to rejoice. Just rejoice in all things. I'll say it again, rejoice, right? Let's sing that song. Come on, kids. It seems like as if life's a little more complicated than the kids' song, rejoice in the Lord always. With me, if you grew up in Sunday school, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice. That's the whole song. I just taught it to you. That's fun to sing as kids, but at some point you realize that's just not possible with the way life is. But let's put the verse back in context. Later on in chapter 4, I'm going to teach a whole message on verses 11 and 12. But in the context where he says, just in the chapter, he ends off this little section by saying, I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty, for I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed, living in plenty, or living in want. What he's saying, listen, I've been there. I've tried to fill this thing up. I've had it filled up, and I've had it dumped out. But I've learned, the two key words in this section are learned and secret. Well, it must be a secret because it seems like nobody knows how to fill this thing up, right? Seems like no matter what we put in it, the magic trick I want to do is be able to put all that stuff in there and have it keep on, being empty. And I realized first service that there actually is a hole in the stage back here where our equipment is, and I probably could have pulled that off if I had thought about it a little bit better. And I'm like, dang it. 10 years from now, I hope you forget this message. Maybe I'll re-preach it and do the actual magic trick. And I'll just keep dropping stuff in there. I could put an old fishing pole down in there, everything. I could have Jonathan underneath just pulling the fishing rod down, Well, Paul, it must be a secret. Could you share it with me? He says, yes, I'm trying to share it with you. This whole letter is about me trying to share with you this secret. If you go back to chapter 1, he says, I'm writing you, and every time I think about you, I have joy. And I'm writing you with a joyful heart. He mentions the word joy 11 times in this book. And in the middle of chapter 1, he says, I want you to know what's happened to me has actually turned out to be a good thing. And he brings up this issue of what's happened. And it's important you understand that because so many of us are looking for happiness based on what is happening in our life. And as things happen to get better, I'm happy for a little while, but eventually either it doesn't seem to stay up there and this thing's perfect. Like you were trying to fill this thing up with water, it's a basket weave. It just keeps on leaking and leaking and leaking. Or somebody comes in and they just kick the thing over and they dump it all out. Well, Paul's in the middle of a season where you would think it should all have been dumped out. He had this calling from God. Wouldn't it be amazing to have Jesus tell you exactly what he wants you to do? Paul, I want you to take the gospel to the entire world. My disciples, the guys I led, they're struggling to get out of the city. They haven't even got out of the county yet. So I need somebody who will really take me serious when I said go into all the earth, and they won't listen. So will you do it for me? Sure will, Jesus. I'll do it. And halfway along the journey, he gets thrown in jail, and he's going to go before Caesar, where Caesar's either going to have him executed or have him released. But either way, he's got to spend several years in jail along the way. No, God, you were going to fill my bucket up because I was going to be your guy to take things to the world, and now I'm in jail. And Paul says, I realize what has happened has actually turned out for the good because it's opening up opportunities here in jail I never would have had otherwise. Not to mention the fact that Paul had the opportunity while he was in jail to write several letters. And while you would have thought he'd be much more effective being out there in the countryside meeting people face to face, the letters he writes from jail, like Philippians and Colossians and Ephesians, have lived on for thousands of years to touch many more people than he ever could in his own life. And he says, what has happened to me has actually turned out for the better. You see, his happiness wasn't contingent on what happened. It came from somewhere else. He says, learn the secret of being content regardless of the circumstances. It's funny, I can say things every single week, and you could even know the thing I'm about to say, but maybe perhaps missed the word and the connection. I missed it. I didn't even see the connection until I reread it again this week. I don't try to write this statement into everything I preach. It just sort of comes out in every message. And I say it almost every week, that this life is about nothing more, right, than a loving relationship that you can, there it is. Right there in the middle of that statement, that you can enjoy for all eternity. You see, if you think that this life is about fulfilling the traditional role in your life and that you got to be the perfect wife, the perfect husband, the best mother, the best father, if you think that's what this life is all about, you're going to find at some point your wife dies, your husband leaves you, they're not the perfect one, you got to go find somebody else, it doesn't work, it's not fulfilling. If you think that this life is about going out pursuing your dreams and becoming yourself and finding the career that you really want to do, and you can do anything if you put your mind to, and you can find that success somewhere in life, and you're going to fill it up that way, eventually somebody knocks that over, the business fails, the dream never happens, you don't get into the school, eventually that doesn't work either. But if this life is about nothing more than a loving relationship with Jesus, then it doesn't matter what happens. You see, Paul is in the middle of, he's on death row. And for him, there's only two ways this is going to go. Either he's executed or he's released. There's no, we're going to, extend your sentence out for 10 years. Rome didn't work like that. They didn't want to have they were not going to be paying for people to stay in jail for a long time. Either you belong in society or you don't. And if you don't, we got a simple solution for that that's pretty cheap. We execute you, right? This whole idea of rehabilitation or punitive, punishment over time, no, they didn't believe in that. You await trial, and then they execute you, or they let you go. So Paul's waiting to have one of those two things happen. And what would you think the question is everybody's asking him while he's in this moment? People come to visit him all the time. What do you think they're always asking? What do you think is going to happen? Right? Anybody who's has a court case coming up? What do you think is going to happen? I think you're going to get executed. Think you're going to get off? What do you think is going to happen? You know what Paul's answer always was? I don't know. I don't care. Sincerely, I don't know. I don't care. He answers it for us over in chapter 1. In the middle of that whole thing where he says, what's happened to me, and I'm writing you with joy, and I just want you to know that, I just still have this joy. I want you to have this same joy. That's all in chapter 1. In the middle of that, he answers the question about what's going to happen. He says, I don't know. I'm either going to get executed or released. But for me, it doesn't matter. Why? It says in verse 21 of chapter 1, because for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. What is he saying? For me to live is the same thing life is always about. For me to live is about my loving relationship with Jesus Christ. For me to die, then I get to enjoy that relationship for all eternity face to face. You see, for me, this life's about nothing more than my loving relationship with him. So whether I get to live and get to continue on pursuing the mission that God called me to do, well, great. I get to enjoy my relationship with God, develop it, build it, gain more crowns of righteousness, more rewards in heaven for the long term, whatever that may be. I get to continue doing that and continue to deepen and develop my loving relationship with God, something I only have a unique opportunity to do while I'm here on this earth. Because once this life is ended, I face judgment for everything that I've done. I'm either rewarded or I'm punished or I missed out or I gain. And I can't wait for that to happen because I know I'm doing pretty good on that scale. And so I look forward to the day when I get to meet him finally face to face once again, and I get to experience and enjoy all those things that await for me in heaven. So Paul, how can you be happy regardless of your circumstances? He says, because I've learned that it doesn't matter what my circumstance is, I can still have a loving relationship with God in spite of my circumstances or because of my circumstances. And at the end of all things, I get to enjoy that relationship with him for all eternity. That's what this life's all about. I'm going to finish out with a quote. I think this dates back to the Easter before my wife had passed away back in 2012. I think is when I read this quote. And this was a quote that launched me on a journey to ultimately conclude and realize what this life is all about. This is sort of a long version of it that I've sort of succinctly put down for what I say every week about how this life's about nothing more than loving relationship with Jesus Christ and enjoy for eternity. The long version, and I can't remember who wrote this, it says simply this: the greatest challenge in life is to cultivate such a deep and satisfying relationship with God that you can rest in him. I think we talked about rest last week, the shalom, that you can have rest in him. Whether living or dying, comfortable or miserable, to be able to cultivate that unshakable confidence that God himself is better than anything this life can give us or death can take away from us. This is the faith that the writers of the New Testament talk about. This is the faith that Paul is talking about. That you could cultivate such a deep and satisfying relationship with Jesus Christ. That it doesn't matter what happens in this life. That you'll be able to enjoy any circumstance. Because either this is something where I can enjoy all the blessings that God has given me, or it's something that gives me the opportunity to display my love for God only to enjoy blessings in the life after. But it doesn't matter what happens. Because happiness in my life is not dependent on what happens. The joy, rather, that I have is because of the perspective I realize this life is not all there is. And this life is about my relationship with him. And therefore, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter what school I get into. It doesn't matter what career I pursue. I can do any of those things and still cultivate a loving relationship with Jesus Christ. That 1,000,000 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 100 years from now is going to be the only thing that matters anyway. And I'll be able to enjoy that for all eternity. As you think about that, let's close in prayer. Father, for some of us in here, it's a great comfort to realize that the failed dreams and struggling pursuits that we are now going after in the end aren't really what this life is all about. And furthermore, Father, forgive us for blaming you for our life not turning out like we wanted it to. Forgive us for thinking, Lord, that it was your job, your responsibility to fulfill our dream or our method of happiness pursuits. And help us realize this morning that this life will only find happiness. This life we can only find joy in our pursuit of a relationship with you. Something that this life can't give us and death can't take away from us. It can't be earned or bought. It's simply the relationship that awaits each and every one of us, Lord. May we humbly recognize that today and pursue that each day. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.